AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Morning, guys. Welcome to podcast number 2. Hopefully you've just listened to podcast number 1 and enjoyed it. Amazing conversations to be had every time. Sheriff Clark, again, thank you. Looking forward to the Dan Bongino this morning and Brandon Darby, who is actually at the border, which is probably the flavor of the week for liberals this week, and it'll go away. But while they're worried about it, we're going to talk about it. And the unfortunate part, I think, for liberals in the Democratic Party is that we have social media and we have video and audio. So the things that you say are never going to go away. And we're watching these people who, and we're going to hear from Representative Cicilline in a few minutes. We'll hear from President Obama and the Senator Obama from 2005, I think 2007, different points in time. And you can YouTube is a wonderful thing in many cases. You can go back and find people like Clinton and like Obama, and I'm sure you can find some for Trump as well, where they sat on a topic and faced one way and then literally completely the other way when they were running for an office. But the difference is President Trump changed and evolved as a citizen. He was never a politician up until this run. When he made his stances known, these people were the definition of flip-flop. There's an audio clip I want to play for you from back in 2005. This is 13 years ago. This is Senator Barack Obama arguing against illegal immigration and holding employers accountable and the desire for us to have a stronger border. So go.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country. So that's why we need to start by giving agencies charged with border security new technology, new facilities, and more people to stop, process, and deport illegal immigrants. Having said that, securing the borders alone does not solve immigration management. We're going to have to better manage legal immigration in order to end illegal immigration. Senators McCain and Kennedy point us in the right direction on that point. Right now, we've got millions of illegal immigrants who live and work here without knowing their identity or background. That's part of the reason that we need a guest worker program to replace the flood of illegals with a regulated stream of legals who enter the United States after checks and with access to labor rights. Part of the reason that illegal immigration is so damaging is that it ends up creating a pool of workers with depressed wages and no rights, and that's not something that we find acceptable. American employers also need to take responsibility. Too often, illegal immigrants are lured here on the promise of a job, only to receive unconscionably low wages. In the interest of cheap labor, unscrupulous employers look the other way when employees present fraudulent U.S. citizenship documentation. These acts hurt both American workers and immigrants whose sole aim is to work hard and get ahead. And that's why we need a simple, foolproof, and mandatory mechanism for all employers to check the legal status of new hires. Let me repeat, we need strong border security at the borders, but we also need a virtual border that is created by employers having to check to see if these people genuinely are legally in this country.
That's a guy I would vote for. That's why, and I got to tell you, I was duped. When I first saw Senator Obama speaking, I said to members of my family, there's the next president of the United States. This guy's well-spoken. He's educated on the topics. He's smart, blah, 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 blah. Did you notice his focus on the difference? He very clearly differentiated legal and illegal, spelling it out a couple different times, which is something that no longer exists on the left. They talk about immigration, period. They don't say legal or illegal. They say undocumented or whatever is the word of the day. But the fact of the matter was that is exactly what the government is saying now. And the left would have you believe that there are Nazis in the White House. Once again, watering down the term. So, yeah, you know what? Maybe he evolved. And maybe he changed his opinion and became much more pro-illegal. We fast forward 2007, Obama talking about immigration and illegal immigration into April 2007. Go ahead and roll it.
This is not going to be a free ride. It's not going to be some instant amnesty. What's going to happen is you are going to pay a significant fine. You are going to learn English. You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally. But after you've done these things over a certain period of time, you can earn your citizenship. So that it's not something that is guaranteed or automatic. You've got to earn it, but over time, you give people an opportunity. Now, it only works, though, if you do all the pieces. I think the American people, they appreciate and believe in immigration, but they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it. So we've got to deal with that at the same time as we deal in a humane fashion with folks who have put down roots here, have become our neighbors, have become our friends. They may have children who are U.S. citizens. That's the kind of comprehensive approach that we have to take.
Bingo. Learn English, right? Isn't that racist? Didn't we hear from liberals over the last couple of years, making someone learn the language is a racist thing? Let that, the desire to not have them appropriate to the culture or understand and assimilate is something we've been battling about. Learn English. Also, back of the line. Racist again. Now, fast forward to today. We're dealing with a media that will create whatever narrative it needs to the point where this initial set of photos and videos that you saw coming from the border that the media was using to describe and explain the Trump administration as Nazi-like, turns out that those were pictures and videos from the from the Obama administration. They had to retract. They lied. I mean, and they wonder why we call them fake news. But that was a flat-out blatant lie. Nobody checked. They ran these. And then you have politicians. I mean, I can't even begin. The list is lengthy, all right? But you have, like Representative David Cicilline from the corrupt and horrifically run state of Rhode Island. David Cicilline is a Democrat. He visited an immigration facility in McAllen, Texas last Sunday. And see, here's the problem. We have, and when I say we, I say Breitbart. We have Brandon Darby, who writes the Cartel Chronicles. Brandon lives on the border. Brandon is literally on the border of this country and Mexico every single day. So if something's happening, and listen, I got to say it again, at Breitbart, we're not going to lie to you. If they're doing stupid shit, if they're doing inhumane stuff, we're going to tell you. We're going to show you. We'll be the first ones to tell you and show you, because that's what news is supposed to be. But we have people there every day. And what we're being told and what we're being seen, you know what it reminds me of? I had the honor of going to the Middle East two different times in 2008, I believe it was, in 2011, to visit our soldiers. And the thing that I came back with was the war I was being told about in the media was not the war that was actually happening. And the soldiers over there said this much often. This is exactly what's happening here. The media can tell you and show you whatever story they want. And they've done it in the past to explain away or explain about things that they like or dislike. But David Cicilline went to the border. Listen to him talk about being at this immigration facility, and listen to the words and the adjectives he uses to describe the conditions for these camps.
Our great country has had a wonderful tradition of welcoming people who are fleeing violence and persecution, and we do that through the asylum process. This new policy of the Trump administration, developed by the Trump administration, by the Attorney General of the United States, with the approval of the President of the United States, is undermining the founding values of this country, ripping children literally from the arms of their mothers in order to try to prevent people from coming to America. This is not what our country stands for. We are here today to bring attention to this, to call on the Trump administration to stop the zero-tolerance policy, which makes zero sense. And we saw the fear in the eyes of these children who are wondering when they will see their parents ever again. It's a disgrace, it's shameful, and it's un-American.
All right, another complete ass clown who, by the way, he just mentioned and tried to obfuscate the point. The asylum process. Your kids are not ripped from you during the asylum process. If you're seeking asylum, there's a proper path at the border to go through, and those people are being treated the way they've always been treated. This is not a Trump-era policy, okay? This is a Clinton, Bush, Obama-era policy that has been going on forever. It's just getting votes and raising money politically right now, the thing to do and talk about. So he basically lied to you about what's happening. Babies are being ripped from their parents' arms. When you commit a crime, you don't get to take your kids to jail. This is no different. And so, you know what liberals' answers to that is? Well, it's just a misdemeanor. It's just, well, the fact of the matter is, if you go through door number one, which is the asylum process, or you're seeking refuge from oppression and religious oppression and violence, you go through door number one, and there's a process. If you go through any other door, you're breaking the law. And they know that. Where do you think? So the human trafficking business is turning into a multi-billion-dollar industry. When President Obama changed the laws to say that if you had a child with you, you could not be detained, the numbers at the border went up hundreds of % of people arriving with children. Child trafficking, these weren't the kids of these adults. These were people that were sold, kids that were sold on the market, the child trafficking market. So listen to, and I think the number I heard the other day, people are paying $7,000 to be brought from southern Mexico to the border to be bussed. So they're not fleeing financial oppression and hardship. All right. What they're doing is they're paying it, which means that they are not suffering financial duress, number one, or they're going back to slavery. The old slavery where you basically put your family in debt to the cartel or to these traffickers to work off the price of getting to the border. And if you don't, gangs like MS-13 kill you. And we know for a fact that a significant portion of the undocumented young teenagers coming across are being recruited by MS-13, which, if you want to talk about Nazis, they are everything that Nazis were and more. So that's and all of that is to say, Brandon Darby's going to be on this morning, and we're going to talk to him. Brandon, again, he writes the Cartel Chronicles. You have to listen and watch some of the stuff. They are on the border daily. They're reporting. They're putting their life in harm's way at the border, literally and figuratively, every single day. And to ignore that and he's an eyewitness. We're getting an eyewitness report on a daily basis here at Breitbart. And again, fact check it all. And don't believe a video. Videos are very powerful things, good and bad. We know that now, like I said, because we watched the mainstream media lie their asses off about the conditions at the border when they were showing you video of the Obama administration policies that were doing the very same things that are being done today. Our president just said the only thing that changed is that we went to a zero-tolerance policy. And Listen, if you believe for a second that there isn't a human element at the border from our border guards and border patrol in making this and fixing this, you're crazy. Thanks again for checking in today. We'll be up with Brandon later. Actually, first guest is going to be Dan Bongino. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Welcome back, guys. And with me now is a guy who I've become, and I'm using air quotes, friends with. I haven't actually had a chance to sit down with him in person, but I've gotten to know him over the years with whatever it takes. He was at the tip of the spear as a Secret Service agent, and he is really at the tip of the spear right now as we conservatives try and keep our niche alive. He is the host of the Dan Bongino Show, a podcast that is just blowing up, and it should. He's a best-selling author. He's an NRA TV host. He is the one and only Dan Bongino. Good morning, DB. What's up?
Hey, buddy. How you doing, man? Good to talk to you.
I'm doing good. Listen, there's so many things I want to get to. First off, I had a question the other day. When I first got it, it was kind of hard to digest. But as I thought about it, it made sense to me. One of my followers, and my followers are conservatives, they're pretty smart people, was asking me to ask Sheriff Clark if I was concerned about the safety of President Trump. We're not asking about, is someone going to try and take his life? What I think the question is coming from a place where we recognize that there are no boundaries for liberals. There are no boundaries. I mean, we've seen them go on the softball field and try and kill politicians. We've seen all of these things. You served you were in the Secret Service. I can't even imagine what the heightened state of awareness has to be for them. But give me your thoughts on his future going into. I mean, they're not going to take the midterms. There is not going to be a blue wave, and that's going to make them even more pissed. He's going to win on North Korea. If we ran today, he would be win by more electoral votes today than he did 2 years ago. Going forward, are you concerned at all? And I'm not asking you conspiracy theory, but are you concerned about an extreme event?
You know, I always am, but I've been concerned. I guess in the Secret Service, you learn to never not be concerned. And, you know, I'm a diehard conservative like you, but I can tell you, and I made the same argument when the transfer happened from Bush to Obama. And at that time, a lot of liberal media folks were like, oh, my gosh, the threat is through the roof. There's nothing like this we've ever seen before. The conservatives are going to come after Obama and all this other stuff. They were making kind of some of the similar veiled arguments. You can see it in their tone. And I argued back then, and I'll argue now, that really wasn't true. I mean, obviously there was hyperbole involved. But, Curt, the threat level for the president is always at 100. Always. I mean, you can't have 102. I mean, it just is what it is. It's never any different. And whether it's, I always say, the way we evaluate a security plan for the president is, I call it the big six, right? Tactical threats, medical emergencies, chem bio attacks, IEDs, airborne assaults, and like fire and geologic type stuff. That's always at a 10. Now, technology changes, and they'll bring in new technologies to, interrupt potential bomb explosions and things like that. But the threat level and the way they conduct the security of the president, Curt, I don't know if I don't want to say I'm not worried about it,
right?
But I'm not anxious about it.
Right.
They're always worried, and that's a fair and honest answer. I would never BS you.
Right. I want to touch on a couple things. I want to real quick. Any idea what happened to the Las Vegas shooting? I mean, that disappeared so quickly and so conspicuously, and it disappeared from an agency we now know is as corrupt as the day is long at the top. And I'm wondering why 59 people were murdered in the streets of Las Vegas, and that got little to no attention after a week.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. I mean, the sheriff out there was out in front of the media giving these briefings seemingly on a daily basis, and then, next thing you know, you don't hear anything about it. Now, I did a lot of commentary on this when it happened, and I know the Vegas tourist industry obviously was eager to make this go away. I mean, for obvious reasons, it was a horrible tragedy. They didn't want it on the front page of the news forever. But no, you haven't heard a lot about it. And I couldn't give you a really good answer. I mean, the circumstances behind it are still open. How they got all those weapons up there, how the people in the hotel didn't seem to notice anything. But no, you haven't seen much about it. It's, the case is it really fallen off the front page of the news. But I know Las Vegas isn't interested in keeping this out there the whole time either. So there's a lot of pressure economically to make this go away.
Every bit the same as Disney. Anytime something bad happens at Disney, there's tens of millions of dollars being pushed around to make sure nobody gets to speak. And it kind of segues into my next piece.
Areas, though.
Yeah,
I mean, even obviously even in Hawaii right now, where there's this volcano on one island, and it's really just listen, it's a disaster. We get it, but it's not. I saw a tweet the other day where the guy made this point. He's like, "This is where people think the volcano is on Hawaii," and it was like covering the whole island. And he showed the actual graphic, and yeah, it's a tragedy, no doubt. But of course, it's the media. You know how the media is. They have to hype a story because that's how they get eyeballs on it.
I was able to be on the ground in Puerto Rico, and the disaster in Puerto Rico is so far beyond what anybody in the mainland could ever understand. The corruption was through the roof. The lies coming from the government. I guarantee you we'll never hear the death toll, but I promise you, Dan, the death toll is closer to 50,000 than 5,000. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I thought I saw you on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter. I thought I saw you over there doing that. So
that's hey, listen, let me ask you about it, and then we could go on all day. I want your quick hit takeaway from the Inspector General's report, what your takeaway was, and then kind of what's the next step?
Well, there's two big takeaways. Number one, Comey's finished as a witness. Remember, the Democrats' hope was always to call Comey as a witness in an obstruction case against Donald Trump, because the Democrats' whole ridiculous, nonsensical narrative right now is that Donald Trump has obstructed justice in the Russia probe by firing Jim Comey. Jim Comey, Curt, is now entirely not credible. Why? Because Jim Comey, it turns out, had a personal email himself while investigating Hillary Clinton for a personal email. Not only that, the IG report confirms everything in the Rosenstein letter, which laid out in bullet form why they fired Jim Comey. And so now we have double confirmation from Rod Rosenstein and the IG that Jim Comey sucks. The guy's he's a not credible witness. So that's point number one. Point number two, there's a ton of takeaways. I'm just giving you the top line stuff. Takeaway number two is now we have confirmation that Hillary Clinton did in fact email Barack Obama from her private email account. That private email address, clintonemail.com, had to be whitelisted into Obama's BlackBerry, meaning the White House had to know the entire time that Hillary Clinton had a private email, which renders Obama's statements that he learned about it from the news entirely and completely ridiculous, and gave the incentive for the DOJ now to make that case go away. Why? Because Obama would have essentially been a witness. So that was a huge bombshell in there that, of course, the media just swept underneath the carpet to make it go away.
It goes back to the fact that the President Obama, not only did he know about this whole Trump spying thing going on, but he was, if you listen to the text, he was orchestrating and calling the shots, which I got to get to this second question because, well, two things. Number one, this was Jim Comey all over again, in the sense that Christopher Wray laid out a litany of not mistakes. Mistakes would be me calling you Dave. That's a mistake. These are out and out biased, politically biased, driven decisions. And for him to come to at the end of that and say, basically tell us for an hour, hey, these are the most biased people who acted in the most biased way you could ever act. And at the end say, but we don't believe bias played a part in any of this, was laughable. We're not that stupid. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page both were talking about the fact they were going to stop Trump from being president. So I'm curious what you think about the whole bias thing. But more importantly, how are Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, A, not in jail, but B, still working for the FBI?
Well, Page is out, but Strzok, I believe, is still working there because I believe, and I've said this over and over on my show, I believe Strzok is cooperating. Strzok, and that's why I also believe he's going to testify up on the Hill, and he hasn't even requested a subpoena. He said he's not going to plead the Fifth. So I believe Strzok is cooperating. Well, he should be fired either way. I don't think his cooperation has earned him a pension. But I believe they're keeping him in there. And it's complicated. I'll try to make it really super fast. But when you work for the federal government and they still have administrative control over you, there's a reason to keep Strzok employed. In other words, Curt, you want your pension, you're going to talk. If they fire Strzok has every incentive in the world to plead the fifth, and they have no cudgel over him. So right now, as an administrative employee still of the FBI, they can make him talk. I mean, he still has the right to plead the fifth no matter what. But if he leaves, there's no administrative hold over him at all. So I believe there's a reason for keeping him on board. And that's why I've encouraged everyone with Strzok to just take it back a notch and just see if he's cooperating first. If he's not cooperating and he's still employed, yes, you're right. It's a total travesty. But if he is, we may actually get something out of this.
Here's where I am at. These are, and liberals as a whole, and I don't caveat anything. If this offends you, it's supposed to offend you. I mean to offend you. But liberals are feckless, weak-willed people driven by ideologies that are ridiculously stupid. This is a group of people who don't give a shit about anybody on the world but themselves. Somebody somewhere is going to roll. So it's going to because I look at this as a snowball. Once that first person, maybe it is Peter Strzok, once that first person says, you know what, I'm not going to jail for Hillary Clinton, and opens up the Pandora's box, then it's going to be the all hands on deck, every person for themselves, rats off a sinking ship. We're going to see it all, and we're going to see and hear things that we had no earthly idea were even possible. Is Peter Strzok, or is somebody there, that person?
Yeah, I think there already is that person. Strzok's boss, Bill Priestap, who was the head of the counterintelligence division, is just named on a press release regarding another case they were working. In other words, Bill Priestap, who was Strzok's boss, is still actively working cases like this, which says to me that Priestap is, in fact, cooperating and providing evidence, too. Curt, I'm not – listen, I get it. There's a lot of animus at Sessions, and I understand that for the recusal decision. But there is stuff going on behind the scenes. That Huber, the United States attorney appointed by Sessions to look at this stuff, Huber is, from what I'm hearing from people, already has active investigations going on into this. And that's different and separate from the IG probe. The IG has no power to prosecute at all. They only have power to investigate. The Huber does.
And I'm with you on the Sessions thing. I've been disappointed. I've been disappointed in Gowdy. But I also understand, like, you and I, what we want and what are possible are two different things. I believe Jeff Sessions, with all my heart, I'm going to be crushed if he's not, is doing things behind the scenes because he doesn't want to be out in front of the CNN and the MSNBCs, and because he knows he's not going to get anything done if he does that. What I found to be incredibly insightful was Trey Gowdy has disappointed me time and time again because I guess I wanted him to be that ass kicker, right?
God,
you're going to jail, you're going to jail. But when he comes out and basically says, listen, I've been defending these guys for 2 years now, and this report makes me look like an idiot.
I was all over Gowdy. I had conservatives and Republicans, oh, my gosh, Dan, what are you doing ripping Gowdy? Gowdy's the best. When Gowdy said that the FBI had handled this thing appropriately, I was all over him. And I was right. Those comments were horrible. But I have to agree with you that Gowdy now has seemingly turned the quarter completely. I mean, he's like a new man. Now all of a sudden he's on the FBI again. He's on the potential corruption over there. So, I don't know what to make of it. I was super disappointed in him, but now he seems again to have made another turn. And, I hope he's headed in the right direction. It looks like he is.
Well, they had an ally on our side in a sense in Trey Gowdy, and I think that what they did to him made him look like a fool. And if that ends up being the case, I don't think Trey Gowdy takes that sitting down. Let me ask you about you. Your podcast is blowing up. Where can people get it? And what from a timing perspective? When I know you're everywhere right now, I can't even imagine what your life is like from the writing to the show, the podcast to the NRA stuff to Fox stuff. The Dan Bongino Show. When and where? And when and where are you on NRA TV?
Well, this podcast is on iTunes, it's on iHeart, it's on SoundCloud, so you can pretty much pick it up anywhere. It's also at my website, Bongino.com. And the NRA TV show is live every night, 5:30. It's free at NRATV.com. And I do a lot of the Russia stuff, a lot of news of the day. But the Russia stuff has been I'm writing a book on it now. We just finished it. We just signed the contract not that long ago. So the book is going to be an eye-opener. So there's a lot going on. It's been really busy.
Hey, listen, always a pleasure, honor. God bless you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You're one of the reasons why I do this, honest to God. I spent my life being afforded the luxuries of the freedoms that were fought and died for, and I feel like I got to spend the rest of my life trying to pay you guys back. And watching you take the shit you take for being someone who's put yourself on the line for this country infuriates me to no end. But I love you, and I wish you nothing but the best, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon, pal.
Hey, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
All right, DB, you take care. Dan Bongino, guys. The Dan Bongino Show is a podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can find. And again, it is blowing up. The podcast is blowing up, and as well it should be. He's on Fox every other night. The guy doesn't sleep. So anyway, thanks again to him, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
Everything in hip-hop is not bad. Kanye agreed with us, so let's love him today until he raps tomorrow and you turn your back. Because if you jump off when the fun of the moment is over, then you are in fact making Kanye the token he is accused of being. So please, don't do that. Don't go there.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Welcome back, guys. You heard the comments earlier from Senator Obama, then President Obama, Representative Cicilline, all of them up in arms, outraged at things that are happening at the border, around the border, on the border. I've been privileged enough, and I think we at Breitbart have been privileged enough to have a man who has put himself in harm's way from day one, and who has brought me a pair of eyes from the border. He's one of the authors of the Cartel Chronicles. He is part of Breitbart, Texas. He is Brandon Darby. Good morning, Brandon. What's up?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
You guys heard Senator Obama, then President Obama, Representative Cicilline talk about a border that sounded like the Trump administration. You also have been privy to video, which we came to find out was false, was fake news, of conditions at the border. Brandon Darby is somebody who has been there, and somebody who, whether I like his answers or not, and he said things and done things that would make you understand and believe he's not about any administration. He is about policy and people. He's been boots on the ground since the beginning of this. And Brandon, listen, can you give me an honest-to-goodness, true picture of what's going on day to day? I'm assuming what I'm seeing and hearing is not very much. There's not a lot of truth involved in it.
Well, there's a couple of different narratives that are clashing and that are merging right
What's
now.
the real one?
And that's the thing is there's several things going on, but the things that people need to separate. The first thing is we're talking about family separations at the border. Okay. The second conversation occurring is the claim that Trump is making kids live in cages at the border. So here's what's happening, right? There are emergency processing centers, the Border Patrol stations, when people are first apprehended where they're taken. Those places put people in a room, and while they're processing them, and the people are separated into chain link little holding cells.
Now, hey, hold on. When you say that people are separated, when you say that people are separated, so let me just...
I'm not talking about families. No, I'm not talking about families. I'm talking about, 20 people are caught crossing the border.
Take me through. So let me ask you something. Yeah. So a man and a woman shows up with 3 kids, and she's not doing the normal process. She's breaking the law. What happens to her and the 3 kids from the time she's caught by a border guard? How does that process work?
Well, it depends. So that's what I'm trying to get at. So what's happening is the same basically triage units, right? The same processing centers that Trump is using are the same exact facilities that Obama used. Okay? So what's occurring is people are seeing those images for the first time, and they're assuming that is, when families are separated or where the adult is incarcerated and the children are put in shelter, they're assuming that is the long-term shelter that Trump is keeping kids in. So that's where a lot of the outrage is coming from. It's because we released all the photos of the insides of those processing centers in 2014, but mainstream media largely ignored it. So people are seeing these images for the first time, and they're naturally disturbing. I mean, nobody likes to see anyone in a processing center unless they're a murderer or a rapist, right? Because there's no pretty way of gathering 100 people that you caught crossing a border and you don't know who they are. You can't put them all in a room together, kids and grown-ups, and go, okay, turning off the lights, good night, sleep well. You can't do that, for obvious reasons. So the only way to do that is to use something like chain link or something or bars, or you could use brick, but then they would say cells, and then it would require more people to monitor and watch because you would have individual rooms. So the immediate processing centers are something completely different. The same processing centers Obama used are the same ones Trump is using. That's a completely different argument, a completely different situation than the family separations. Now, family separations, that's an interesting situation because the law basically says, look, you can't incarcerate kids with their parents because the parents did something. So what the way that Obama addressed that was he just said, well, I'm not going to prosecute or enforce the law because I don't want to keep them together. Well, what that did was it created a policy called catch and release, which meant if you came with a kid, then we can't hold you. You get to go. You get to walk free in America, in the United States. Well, obviously that created a pull factor, and obviously that created an influx of problems at our border, a major influx of problems at our border. So what Trump is saying is like, no, from now on, we're going to enforce the law 100%, absolute zero tolerance, and we're going to enforce the law. And because he's enforcing the law, by law, that means he cannot incarcerate the kids with the parent, the adult who's being charged with a crime of crossing the border illegally. So that is where the separations come from. Personally, I don't like that. That is what the law says, and if the only alternative is either to change the law or to use prosecutorial discretion, and then let everybody walk who comes with a kid. Well, obviously you can't do that. So there's that is where what people are upset about are the family separations, and then a lot of it is fueled because they think that the processing centers are actually the long-term housing for these children. So they're seeing images of kids with space blankets, on a mat on the floor in a something that looks like a dog kennel, because it does look like a dog kennel.
Right.
But so the separations issue is a whole nother issue than like I said, the immediate processing. But when it comes to the immediate processing, there's just no way to deal with mass numbers of people crossing a border and apprehending them and do it in a pretty way. You can't put everyone in the Hotel Hilton, right? So a lot of this is just, as a nation, you have to go, okay, do we have borders or don't we have borders? Many years ago in the Bush administration, there were family detention facilities, and those were shut down. The left protested those family detention facilities that kept families together. The left protested that. Anyone can Google it. Google Hutto Family Detention Center. And what you'll see is that the left had a massive movement protesting the family detention centers, wanting them all shut down. Well, they all got shut down, and now the left is saying, well, you can't separate families, and you can't keep the parent away from the kid. And so it's like, well, now, okay, so basically what they're saying is you can't keep them as a family, and you can't keep them if you separate them. So they're saying basically that any time a family comes, we have to just let them go in the United States and let them live here. And that's just not something we can do either. So this is where all of the controversy is. It's all in that. A lot of it is obviously. I'm not a fan of family separations. I don't think we should separate them, but I also don't think we should release them. I don't think that we should separate families, but I also don't think we should release families into the U.S. At the heart of this is really, the result of what the left is wanting would mean that anytime anyone comes with a kid, they get to stay in the U.S., and we can't have that either. So it's getting to be a tricky situation.
So I saw numbers anywhere from like 200% to 400%. When the policy changed to, if you show up, basically what it said was, if you show up at the border with a minor, you get to be released. And the numbers went through the roof, people showing up at the border with children, not necessarily their children. But I try to tell people part of the issue here is the human trafficking and child trafficking that is going on, where people are paying for or buying kids to accompany them to the border to be for the catch and release program. And you know, that's one of the things one of the stories that's not being told. And I wonder how big of a piece of the process that is. And let me ask you, after you address that, I want to know what you think about what's going on down there. Because you're watching it, you're seeing it, and I wonder if you have solutions or if you have any thoughts about what should happen going forward.
Yeah, I do, and I think that, you know, looking at the totality, looking at the overall issue and the overall problem, what keeps happening is there's a couple of things that keep happening, but the thing that's most concerning to me is we keep getting outraged over whatever's in the news. Okay, as a nation. Right. The caravan is coming. All of a sudden we're outraged. We're calling them illegals. We're saying illegal army of invaders, and that just wasn't true. The fact is if people come here requesting asylum, they're not exploiting our law. They're not finding a loophole. That is a major feature of our law, that they get to do that, and that is not illegal. If you don't like it, you have to advocate for the laws to be changed. But what has happened is on both sides of the coin, the Democrats and the Republicans do this when it comes to the elected leaders. What has happened is we have a completely messed up system for immigration that is outdated. We have an asylum policy that's geared toward making sure that the Holocaust, that we don't turn away people who later end up in Nazi camps, right? We have a policy geared in that direction when we're dealing with economic migration issues, right? Primarily. So we have, everything is messed up. And so what we have is, we have Democrats who had 2009 to 2010 and could have changed the law, and they chose not to. They had enough clout and enough of a supermajority to push Obamacare, to push Obamacare down our throats, or if you're a liberal listening, they had enough clout to pass ACA without bipartisan support. So they could have changed immigration laws. The Republicans have had supermajority since then. They could have changed immigration laws. But nobody wants to change it because they don't want to take the political chance of trying to change it. What they do is they wait till a situation like this comes up. The Republican congressman did it when it came to that caravan. They released these really fiery, strong press releases and make these big statements in the media pointing fingers at the people coming here following the law, when really it's them. It's the leader in Congress not changing the law. The Democrats are doing that right now. They're saying, you're separating families, you're doing this, rah. Right. Well, really, the truth is Trump is just following the law to the T, and those people they were comfortable saying, just leave the law as it is, just ignore the law. Well, obviously, we're not going to do that. Obviously, we can't do that. So that's really what's happening here is you have Republican, Democrat elected leadership being cowards, refusing to make changes or try to suggest changes, and then pointing the finger at others to cast light on those others instead of themselves and their own failures.
I always try to make sure I take this approach from the standpoint of, there is no one solution. We're a nation of 300 million people. There's billions of people on this planet. One size never fits all, and it won't. But when it comes to the law, you either follow the law or you don't. You know, we can't treat the border like we treat the speed limit. And just because you're asking, well, I think there's a job to do, and it's a dangerous one. When you talk about, and this is where I think you can shed some light for some people and help them understand the dangers. The cartels and terrorist organizations around the world are infiltrating this country through the border, through quote unquote immigration, and this is one of the things where when people talk about the zero tolerance policy, I don't understand why we have a country full of people up in arms about children being separated from parents who commit crimes, when that's always been the case. You don't get to take your son or daughter to jail when you commit a crime. And we're not talking, and I don't think you are either. I'm not talking about the person who is fleeing the horrible situation in Venezuela to come to America for a better life for their family. I'm talking about the people who are coming in here and being undocumented workers and depressing wages and things like that, as well as the cartels using them to cross the border. And I wonder, is there, through all of the muck, is there really a kind of a one-size-fits-all? And no one's going to be happy, and that's just the way it's going to be. But the fact of the matter is, you can't be a sovereign nation without borders and without laws. And this is both of those things on trial.
That's really the crux of it is do we have a sovereign nation? Do we have a border? And can anyone in the world who wants to come here and stay? Milton Friedman addressed this. You can't have an open border and unchecked migration and have a system of entitlements and a social net at the same time. You can't have those in a nation. So if everyone in the world who wants to come here, back in the day, people who wanted to come here could come here, but there were if you came here and you didn't work and you didn't participate, you didn't live, you didn't eat. Nowadays, it's not that way. You can come here and your kids will be educated, your kids will receive health care, your kids will, and you can't have that situation. It's just not sustainable. It's not a sustainable situation to have that while we have the social net that we have. It's just not a sustainable situation.
What do you think about E-Verify? And why is that something that is such I look at that like voter ID laws. Why isn't that just kind of a no-brainer kind of a thing?
Well, again, this is a situation where, on the right, we like to slam the left. On the left, they like to slam the right. But really, there's a lot of slamming both sides deserve. A lot of employers don't want E-Verify. Some do use E-Verify.
Right.
But a lot of employers don't want E-Verify. So take the Republican Party in Texas. If you're the Republican Party in Texas and your major funders are builders who have business models that are based off the exploitation of foreign labor, and your business models, some of these business guys sell houses for amounts that no one can compete with. How do they do that? They do that because they use contractors who use illegal immigrant labor.
Right.
That's what they do. And their business models are based off that. Well, they're the major donors to the Republican Party and to elected officials in Texas. And if they're the major donors, well, those elected officials in Texas aren't going to push through anything that would make their donor mad. And that's really
and Brandon,
really the deal.
I've always looked at that as a very simple solution. If you implement enormous financial burden, big fines on companies that employ illegals, you would change that. The government's not going to do that for the reasons you said, and that's one of the things that needs to change. Brandon, listen, it's always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you, as always,
Thanks for having me
keeping
on.
up. And I'll be back. I'll be hitting you up as we move along in this new podcast form, because this is something I know for a fact. In the next 30 days, this is going to go away because liberals are going to start caring about something else. But we're going to keep talking about it because it does need to be talked about. It does need to be resolved. So thanks again, bub.
Thank you.
All right. Brandon Darby from Breitbart, Texas. And again, the guy's at the border, and he's telling you the truth from a human's perspective, not from a political affiliations perspective. And always appreciate who and what he does. So, hey, guys, thanks again for checking in podcast number 2. Dan Bongino, as always, a pleasure. Brandon Darby from Breitbart, Texas. Winners and losers today. My winner is Tucker Carlson. This is the quote. If you're looking to understand what actually is happening in the real world, always assume the opposite of whatever they're telling you on the big stations. So basically, Tucker said that the other day, and Seth MacFarlane went batshit crazy. But it's true. And very few people have the guts to say it. I had a hard time, as always, picking the loser today because there was a couple different ones. From Adam Schiff saying that he didn't know if Peter Strzok should be fired. But it ended up becoming easy. In a day and age when fake news is so prevalent, and the left would have you, and the media would have you believe that that's an anti-American sentiment, the oppression of a free press. We have Kevin Cullen. Kevin Cullen works for the Boston Globe, owned by John Henry, a liberal of epic proportions. It was found out the Boston Globe won Pulitzer Prizes for its reporting of the Boston bombing, and we came to find out that Kevin Cullen actually filed fake stories, fake news around the Boston bombing. He reported and wrote about things that never happened. He reported and wrote about things he was never there to see. He was caught, and he was suspended. So the loser 1A is going to be the Boston Globe for not immediately firing this guy, because that's pretty much, the definition of that job is to tell the truth and bring the news, and he did the exact opposite. So Kevin Cullen, with a small second-place trophy given to the Boston Globe as our loser of the day. Thanks again for tuning in. Tomorrow, you're not going to want to miss tomorrow. New president of the NRA, Colonel Oliver North, joins us, as well as Cam Edwards. And we're going to talk all about the continued assault on our Second Amendment and our Second Amendment rights and our rights to bear arms. So thank you again. Catch you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I think that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot, Channel 125.